So a lot of my mentorship, I feel, has been strategic.
The part of that mindset is like, I don't have to be able to do it all to be successful. Little things like that, the mindset, the learning to fail forward, asking for help, finding great mentors.
Figure out what's worked for you to see if those pieces could work in my own life.
Wanting something from me and it just sort of naturally evolves. Those are magic.
Today's podcast has the guest, Kristin Gutierrez. She wrote the book, Be a Better Sales Leader. I really enjoyed reading it, so I thought I'd interview on the podcast and share all things with you. Today we talk about children, motherhood, sales leadership, building profiles on LinkedIn, and keeping that pipeline full. So listen in. All right, so today I have Kristin Gutierrez with us, who's a recently published author. And we're going to talk about all things that led her up to this journey and all the exciting stuff. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and to meet you and to know you. It's a thrill. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Okay, so you wrote this book because you wish you had it. So walk us through this journey a little bit.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Because when I became a sales leader at the age of 24, and I'm talking about my first corporate America sales leader job versus like, oh, I was a store manager in college at the retail place. And, you know, we've all led our siblings, whether they were older than us or younger than us. But when I got promoted to this big fancy title of manager, global inside sales, and I was flying to our corporate headquarters in the UK multiple times a year. And my parents were like, what do you do? And being a young female, I was managing a team of older men. So I had no playbook, no blueprint, no guidelines as to how to do my job as a leader. They saw something in me. I'm so thankful that they did. And that my journey from then over the course of the last 20 years has taken me in and out of leadership roles. And I thought, you know, if it could benefit just one person, then the book would be worth it.
Yeah, I know. And I read the book like in one fell swoop. It was that good. I'm like, oh my God, great point. Oh my goodness. Yes, of course. So yeah, and you wrote it, which I think is fun, in a way that, hey, if you're dealing with a certain thing, you can jump to this chapter or that chapter. It doesn't necessarily need to be read in sequence.
I love that you just called that out, because one of the things that I wanted to have as a book is like a choose your own adventure type scenario where, yes, you can actually digest it in mini chunks and not feel overwhelmed by having to read, you know, it's not even that big of a book, but like a whole book cover to cover, and just having core points at different parts. Yes, read it cover to cover by all means, but yeah.
Right. But then you can go back as a reference and be like, oh, I wanted to look into this area a little bit more, or that area a little bit more. And then it gives you some tips there. And then it also references some books that have influenced you along the way. So if you had to pick one book that you said, okay, aside from the one that I just wrote, if you're in sales or a sales leadership position, here's the one that I would reference.
No, there really are so many good books on sales. There are so many good books on leadership, right? And there's just so many great books to read in general. The Challenger Sale is, I think, a book that in practice I reference the most. And it's all about being able to challenge your customers rather than say, oh, I'm a yes person, or become their best friend, or there's multiple, there's 6 iterations that the book describes. And you should kind of have a little embodiment of all of them. And that the relationship builder is by far and foremost like the type of person most salespeople are. But you really excel at sales when you learn how to challenge ideas and challenge the customer comfortably, right? And that's what helps set you apart from your competition. So I would say, because I reference that book the most, that would be the one.
That'd be your favorite. No, that's good. I'll have to pick that one up too, because I liked your book so much. We look at you getting into this job. It was way over your head at 24. What gave you the courage to like navigate that? Because that takes a lot.
A lot of it's in mindset, right? And one of the things I coach on is the mindset of overcoming and the mindset of being able to fail forward. So if you saw, the book is broken into 3 pillars. The whole first pillar of the book, where you learn to fail forward, you learn to ask for help, you understand that the part of that mindset is like, I don't have to be able to do it all to be successful, because success, the higher you get on the food chain, turns out it's more the success of the team anyway below you. If you're a CEO of a big thriving company, you've got multiple teams helping push the success forward. And so it's little things like that, the mindset, the learning to fail forward, asking for help, finding great mentors. I didn't know what a mentor was at 24 until I had one and could reflect back on her and her ability that she mentored me. Did I realize then even what one was and how powerful they are to your success?
Okay, so the one that you found, was it like happenstance, or did someone connect the two of you, or how did that relationship form?
That's a great question. She, as an inside sales contributor, she was one of the reps I was feeding leads to. So even when I got promoted to working with her as like a manager of inside sales, and so now I'm helping other sales reps feed leads to the outside, she was there. So it was happenstance because she worked for the same company I worked at. She then went on to hire me to be a direct rep for her. For 6 years, I worked directly for her. And the irony is I've known her 20 years. I've literally watched through social media, her kids, her daughter, oh, it gives me chills. Her daughters go from grade school to graduation of college to now in their first jobs. Right. We've done yoga together. We've flown all over the world to be in meetings together. And so we've stayed in touch through text and through phone calls all of the years.
Wow. Wow. And so nowadays, do you continue to have a mentor, and is that more sought after, or do you have a more formal process in the relationship there?
Isn't that a great question? I pay for mentor. Well, it's a kind of a little bit of both, right? I pay for formal mentors, and I don't know if everybody who pays for them calls them mentors, but I certainly do, because that's the viewpoint from which I see them. And then through my career in sales and leadership, I've sought out other mentors. A lot of them have been my boss, or maybe they weren't my boss at the time and then they became my boss. Others have been powerful women, right? I mean, I'm really drawn to women in powerful leadership positions that have kind of been there, done that, done it all, worked through a lot of grit and resilience. And then a lot of mentors, and I don't mean a lot, like I probably have 20 mentors over my 20 years, right? Sometimes more than others. But I found them through LinkedIn and through the communities that we're part of. And we have like a natural, I'm not asking for something from them. They're not like wanting something from me. And it just sort of naturally evolves. Those are magic.
No, that is magic. Because a lot of my mentorship, I feel, has been strategic and like on purpose. And so I'm looking at these people saying, okay, hey, listen, I'm fascinated by who you are and what you've been able to accomplish. I'd love to figure out what's worked for you to see if those pieces could work in my own life. I don't know if I've done such a good job of like naturally accumulating mentors. It's definitely been very strategic and specific and for certain purposes. I mean, and I have people in my life that play paid roles too, right? So I have a therapist. I consider her like my parenting coach, because we'll go through all the kids, we'll go through the scenarios of what I'm dealing with, and then she'll give me feedback and maybe how to parent that better or do that better. And she's raised kids that have gone to Ivy League schools. That will not be my story, but I'm like, hey, at least it's somebody that's been there, that's done it, that can give me some advice. And then I have mentors for, not just business. So do you keep mentorship in other areas of your life outside of business?
I think it always comes back to business for me, right? Even like certain friendships I have that I treat like as their advice as like a mentor, it just kind of always comes back to business for me.
Okay. So with your sales careers, you've bounced around and done different things. What has driven those changes?
I think the most unpopular opinion that people wouldn't like feel comfortable saying out loud, which is money. Really. I mean, if I'm being my true authentic self, as I hopped in my industry from one place to another, and typically after 3 or 4 years, it was purely driven by, money on the surface, who's offering more money at the time. But it ironically would lead to like which company is offering different growth potential. Certainly the last company I was at I could see the potential for growth. And sure enough, they promoted me at 9 months pregnant. I got promoted 3 times in 4 years, and or 2 times in 4, something like that. And yeah, one of them was 9 months pregnant. I told that story forever because it was, that just means they really believe in you.
Yeah, a well-played company, right? Like, way to show that I'm going to support you, and we understand these changes you're going through, and we want you here. I mean, that's fantastic. Not a lot of people have that great story.
Yeah. So a combination of money and also where I wanted to go. And then eventually it just, it didn't work out at that company. So, I had an instant opportunity to go out on my own and really take the 20 years of experience selling directly and as a leader to project and, move forward my own career and as working for myself. So that's where we are.
Yeah. Okay. So what are you doing right now? Because that's a huge leap going from this corporate culture of leadership and teamwork and rah, rah, rah to being an independent. I mean, that's big.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm an expert in revenue, growth, and strategy. It's kind of where the sales background comes from. And one thing I love to do is help companies develop and implement sales strategies through workshops and training. Something that differentiates me from other consultants is I don't just look at theory, but actionable takeaways to implement right away. I do free master classes. I teach to anybody, from LinkedIn or on my email list that wants to learn the strategies of that particular master class. And then corporations hire me to do these workshops and various components of that around, again, revenue growth strategy.
And does it go to a specific industry or is it pretty crossover?
It crosses over. I've spent the 20 years of my career in the localization industry, which is a huge, thriving industry, which 20 years now it's a little bit more common. Whereas like 20 years ago, truly being from Midwest America, my family would say, oh, doesn't everybody just speak English, right? But the industry services global corporations from big manufacturer. I mean, any global corporation who wants to put content in other languages. That's where I sold my whole career. So I am serving right now a lot of language services providers, but I am looking to onboard a zoo, and the cannabis industry, ironically, is also one of my clients. And that's an industry that just historically, the way it's kind of grown up in the last couple of years very quickly, there is a lot of room for sales strategy. And that's a very exciting industry. It's like a cousin industry to what I'm doing now.
No, that has to be a crazy industry because you're really limited on different things that you can market and have support that way, right? Because of all the different laws in the different states.
Yeah, it's really exciting and I'm very honored that my client brought me in, and he actually brought me in both to help them. And then he's like, oh, I have this huge network of colleagues in this industry now. And I know, and we're all going through the exact same thing.
Wow. And how would it apply to a zoo? Like one wouldn't think of a zoo as needing a sales component to me.
Yeah. Zoos, aquariums, other nonprofits in that space, museums, they're selling event space at their zoo or at their location. So the event space, and they have, depending on the things you learn, right? Depending on who you're serving, there is a balance of ethics with regards to animal welfare in that case. But it's still like there is a team, and depending on the organization's comfort level with the idea of sales, the reality is door sales, ticket sales, gate sales, people who walk through the gate, memberships, they make up a lot of the revenue, but the other revenue that's being generated is from these events, and those events can range all types, right? It's helping their team connect more on their LinkedIn and connect more back to their business, and to feel like, because even if you're fundraising for a large institutions, for example, I mean, nobody really wants to be sold to, especially these days. We all feel like we're smarter than that, right? But what they want is compassion, empathy, a true understanding of what, they're offering or what you're needing. And that's kind of where that magic happens. So it's coaching and strategy around.
Yeah, just listening to you talk, my mind's blowing with all the layers of sales there truly is, and how much sales affects us every day, right? Like I get sold to all the time on LinkedIn. Somebody's always going to help me with something, right? Like, it's like, I didn't even know I had the problem, but thank you.
Yeah. Even my sister is an attorney and I'm like, okay, you're in sales too.
Right, right. Okay, so how has it been being a mother and being in sales and going on your own and all these shifts? Because that adds a different component too.
I know. I want to interview you because I'm fascinated. Like, how many nannies do you need when you have 7 children?
Well, the nice thing about 7 children is that they all like want to parent each other. And so I feel like I rate, like they're naturally born nannies. Like, you're not allowed to do that. You're not like, that's not the rules. Or, everybody kind of calls each other out. And now it was a lot of work in the beginning, but now I have a 16-year-old and the youngest are 10. So we're just taxi drivers. Like, we don't even get to do the nannying anymore. We just drive kids around.
That's true. Right. Yeah. So how many taxi cab drivers, in addition to you and your husband, I should have asked? For me, because my kids I'm older and my kids are so young. They're 2.5 and 4.5. I'm kind of coming out of the season in life, but right now, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 is like my happy space because it allows me to work. But ever since working for myself, I'm very proud. I've blocked 8 to 9 a.m. for mental health. That's what I call it on my calendar. So I'm reminding myself that you don't have to work around the clock in order to best serve your clients and be really fulfilled. So I am trying to get better at the other 2 time blocks I have in my calendar, but I don't always honor them. But 8 to 9, I'm pretty good at honoring right now. And yeah, that's how I balance it. We have a lot of flexibility. My husband and I, now that we're kind of coming out of the diaper, well, we're still in diapers, but now that we're kind of evolving a little and we see the maturity of the youngest one, we make sure to take time for ourselves. So I'll go away to a local hotel, like a hole in the wall hotel for 2 nights and just like work there. And so I think that's kind of where the balance comes in. Is I'm really good at just shutting my laptop down. And that's like the most humbling thing you learn, as as a working mom, that like, especially if the school calls at 8:05, you were like, oh God, why are you calling? Then they have to come home. So I think like everybody, we rely on a village. We have my mother-in-law who lives next door. We're very blessed. Other than that, we have no real, like my family's nowhere. They're multiple states away, but the little family we have locally, they're a huge help. And yeah, we just try to prioritize.
No, it takes a village for all of us, right? And I love how you have boundaries set up and even how you label that, right? Like when you label something in the morning from 8 to 9 mental health, that automatically triggers your brain to go into that mode. I actually have alarms on my phone, and my alarm, like you can label them, right? So at 3 p.m, it'll be like best mom ever. And that will go off every day so that I automatically like switch my brain into best mom ever mode, right? Am I always the best mom ever? Absolutely not. But the fact that it gives me this little trigger of like, here's the avatar that I need to jump into for these next so many hours. So yeah, no. And the nice thing about working from home is you get to build your day, right? So like for me, I'll drop the first kids off at school at 7:30. I'm done with school drop-offs by 9. I'll work from like 9 to 3 and then everybody's home. And then I do pick up the computer again at night. Like once most of them go to bed and they're on their computer, I'm on my computer. And so I'll do some work at night because I love it. Like I love what I do, and it can get addicting. So I have to have alarms throughout the day to make sure that I don't stay in the addiction of work, because there's a lot of fast feedback in work, and raising kids is a long-term adventure.
This is a good, I wrote, I don't know if you saw me right. I wrote down best mom ever, the alarm. The blessing for me is because my kids are in preschool. They're there until 5 p.m. But as the oldest is about to transition into kindergarten, and there's after school program. Like, I think it's a trade-off, right? Where like the kids do start to get a little easier and they need you in different ways, i.e. running you around town. Like our lights are off at 7 p.m. at night, right? Like trying to get those kids to bed. And I also bust out my computer, but I love the little tip you just taught, like best mom ever. Cause sure enough, over the next 2 years, my day should start to end at 3 so that I can be present for them because they're only little so long.
Oh, I know. I'm telling you right now, I'm in the heat of it. So enjoy this stage because you get to say no, and it means no. When they're 16, you have a 30-minute conversation on why the no is existing, and then you still get like static back. And there's a part of you that wants to be grateful that they're fighting back because then they have a backbone to stand on. There's a part of you that wants you to be like, just sip it. Let's just go. Like mom said, no, we don't need to get into the why every single time. So we're in sales as parents, right? Like I'm sure your 4.5-year-old is learning how to sell you on things on a regular basis.
Yeah, we are pretty proud of his negotiation abilities. And then we're like I think we taught him a little too good. Yeah. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. So how do you get sales to be an independent person now and not in the workforce? Like, how are you collecting new clients?
Yes, great question. LinkedIn and asking, I have so many relationships from my industry and also just from serving. There's two benefits there. It's having in my industry, right? A lot of smaller localization clients are looking to go from 10 million to 20 million in revenue. So and they need help with sales strategy. So often I'm working with the C-level in that case. But I've always served tech, manufacturing, consumer goods, healthcare, life sciences. So all of the other nonprofits, all of the other traditional industry sectors. And so my network on LinkedIn is built up of both companies in the industry I used to serve and then just companies at large and referrals, right? I will say that the first couple of clients were purely based on somebody knowing somebody and referring them over to me, or somebody saying to my client, I'm looking for a consultant to help with X, Y, and Z. I'm looking at so-and-so, and my client saying, well, you should really also look at Kristin. And then I won the client. Yay.
Yes, yes, yes. I always say, like, it's not who you know, it's who knows you that gets you the deals, right? Yes. Okay, so do you have systems? Like, I know for me, when I was in sales more, I guess I'm always in sales, right? But when I was in financial service sales, like I had systems and we ran numbers, and it was like a numbers game so that I got the emotional component out of it. Because you can it's exhausting to hear no a whole bunch of times in a row. So what have you done to help people with like systems and processes, and how do you feel that plays into it?
Yeah, I do feel like having a system to outreach for sure plays into it because I wear my heart on my sleeve even as a sales rep. So the emotion is always going to be there, even if you try to take it out. But there's a couple things. One is like the rigor in the sales process. Do you have a wide net strategy, a narrow net strategy, and a targeted strategy based on whatever vertical or sector that you're prospecting or that your team at large is looking at? So I talk about that a little in the book, but ultimately, sometimes it's a numbers game. Sometimes it's a throw anything at the wall to see what sticks game, as long as you're not ending up in people's like LinkedIn inboxes, like telling them about X, Y, or Z that you offer and they didn't really ask for it. I use LinkedIn if I'm selling or if I'm teaching my teams or clients how to sell in the chat on LinkedIn. It's more of a personal relationship. People still want to feel like they're human. They don't want your DM to show up unannounced. So if you're going to sell to somebody in the chat, you should either wait to see until they view your profile. And how are they doing that? It's because you're putting out content there and you're constantly connecting with more people. And then there's a way to do it in the chat. And then there's a way to do it with the CRMs that a lot of companies are using, plus the third-party platforms that they're integrating to the CRM to like export email lists, etc. Sometimes, and it's a combination of wide net, kind of throw it out there with the right messaging, see if it hits, doing it 10 to 12 times.
I would not think it's 10 to 12 times. That's impressive. That's a lot.
I know. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Is that because we're just in this attention deficit game because we're always getting pinged all the time?
It's funny. In the 20 years that I've sold, like there weren't like email. I didn't know of email strategies when I first became an inside sales rep, and you would have a list of target accounts and you would predominantly call them. Problem is people aren't sitting at desks anymore. I mean, especially since the pandemic, you're often having to track people down on their cell phones. And then that's a little bit more like, are you texting them? Are you calling them? There are definitely industries where that's pretty common, not in these industries I typically coach on. It's more calling somebody at a desk and or emailing them. Right. And then that third thing, which is like, if by LinkedIn, if I've done a really great job of putting content out there and connecting with other people, then people are naturally looking at my profile, which kind of gives me an excuse to say, hey, Jen, how are you? I would, X, Y, or Z, like depending on what I need from you at the end. What is your process for bringing on guests to your podcast without it making like it's a generic request?
Right. And how are a lot of companies, because I see it pitched all the time, that you can hire overseas to manage some of these platforms for you in the sales piece. Are you seeing success in that arena? Are you saying like stay away, or what? Do you not have much to comment there?
I do. I think it depends. So I know it works, and I also have seen it very much not work. And I think that is the combination of who are you hiring and how are you hiring them? Even if you have a full, robust office in Mumbai or Panama or any other offshore place, what is the office environment there? Are they part of a pod of people, or are they just kind of on an island? Even if they're part of a pod of people, it still isn't going to necessarily work unless there is a connection. I think at the end of the day, salespeople are most successful when they feel connected to by their team. When there's a culture that they can identify with within the company that makes them feel like, okay, this is my purpose, this is my passion, kind of all combined into one. And now I'm going to go out and make some money, i.e. set some meetings, get some dollars in the door by selling whatever service or product that I'm selling. And so offshore or in the US, it's important that if you're using an offshore model, my opinion is that those people need to feel part of the team, right? I mean, languages and dialects aside, ironically, because being in the industry I grew up in, the translation industry, you've got dialects and types and accents all over. So like you can look past all of that. But if the person in Mumbai or in California doesn't feel connected to the thing that they're selling or to their company or to their team, I think that in and of itself is why things don't work out. And a lot of times companies say, great, we can hire 10 people offshore for the price of, 1 or 2 people in the States. Let's do that. And then they set them up to fail if there's not proper training or a connection back.
Yeah. I mean, you can lower the cost on one piece, but it's not like entirely gone. You still have to integrate and have the culture and be supportive and have everybody on the same page. And sometimes that's hard in different time zones or different areas or different things.
Yeah, it is. And like, is there a leader in, or is it the CEO? Because often we're finding in the smaller companies, there's a CEO acting as the sales leader. And the CEO is busy doing a lot of other things, right? And so that in and of itself sometimes could be a distraction for the sales team because maybe that leader doesn't have enough time for the team. Maybe they're not like acting more like a sales team. I have seen it tremendously work where even at a fractional CRO level, you bring in a leader to act as the sales leader, to really help give the team some kudos and some tough love and some, training around sales processes and best practices that maybe the CEO truly doesn't have time for, or will raise their hand and say, like, I'm just not good at this.
No, it's fascinating. Like sales is fascinating. Like when I got into sales for financial service, much like you, it was a Dun & Bradstreet. Right. And you're like, oh, this is a street of A's or B's or C's. And I just remember thinking, if I'm going to spend my time I'm calling people in the A streets because at least they have money. It's just like, it was so much work. And nowadays there's so many different ways to get clients. It's just fascinating.
It's really set me up for success to be my own boss, though, because one of the things, ironically, I love managing now is my own pipeline. So I feel like the reason sales is a skill that everyone, no matter what role they're in, should really take the time to learn is because a lot of the skill set is transferable. If you're a business owner managing the P&L statement, it's pretty much still figuring out where the revenues, where's the profit part of it coming from, right? The loss part's easy. I need expenses. I need this and I need that and yada, yada, yada. But like, managing a pipeline and having that skill set is something that serves you no matter where you go after learning it as a skill.
Yeah, no, I want all of my, it's like we tease about it, like all my kids, their kids are masters at sales. Like, let's be honest, like I don't know where the disconnect comes or all of a sudden we get nervous or scared or whatever, but I'm going to tell you this story. So my kids decide that they're going to set up a lemonade stand. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll buy, like, so I'm like, you're buying the supplies. Like, I'll buy them, but you're paying back for the supplies and the cups and all this kind of stuff. They're like, yeah. No, that's fine. So they go out, we're on vacation and they want to have a lemonade stand. So I'm like, hey, fine with this. So we buy all this stuff. They have a lemonade stand. They come back in after 2 hours with like $200 to $300. So you're thinking, what did you just do? Like, what happened? Like, who sold one of you? Like, where are we doing? Is everybody accounted for? And they said, they're like, well, we decided instead of charging a price that people could pay whatever they wanted. And so it was by like donation or whatever they felt comfortable paying. And so with all of us standing there smiling, giving away lemonade, they must have generated extra money, right? Like, I have no idea, but I'm just like, I absolutely love you guys for figuring this out, for having a good time, and all my little sales reps, all of my household.
Oh my goodness. Okay, great. So my 4.5-year-old decides he wants to do a garage sale, but specifically he wants to sell hot dogs so that the people will stop by the garage sale because they smell the hot dogs and then buy stuff. And we were like, oh, okay. But my mom was in town, i.e. extra help. And we decided one morning at 7 a.m. we were doing this garage sale. And wouldn't you know it? The hot dogs worked. They worked. People would like see the grill. They would stop. People would like walk by, like, well, see the hot dogs and smell the hot dogs. They worked. He generated, I don't have a fast figure, but like he generated we sold out of hot dogs that day. In addition to some garage sale items. I was like pulling things from the shed, like, oh, let's sell this too.
That's awesome. I wish our neighborhood allowed garage sales. That'd be a fantastic thing. I've been like getting rid of like the amount of things I need to purge on a regular basis to have room for the growing children is next level. Sales doesn't have to be this like weird, awkward thing that I think sometimes we talk about it as, or we assume it is. And then as you understand the philosophies and the principles and especially the leadership aspect of it, I mean, it's in all of our lives all day long. So, okay. So your book is May 31st, available on Amazon. I'm going to say that it's not just for sales leaders. I think it's for leaders and understanding the sales process and just how to step into roles that you get selected for and then you need to figure out.
Yeah, I love that. Right. And honestly, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if there's like a franchise. I wonder if there's future iterations of this book where you replace the word sales, maybe with nothing, or you just take out the word sales. Because if you saw in the book, it's broken into 3 pillars. So like the first pillar is all about getting out of your own way, failing forward, asking for help, finding mentors. The second pillar is about the sales leadership component, managing up, but also you don't need to be in sales to know that managing up is a good skill to have, and some of those other parameters, right? And then the third pillar is about the professional development piece, where you should always be learning and, feeding your mind or reading stuff about your industry or learning how to be a better leader in whatever capacity that is. So yeah, thank you for the feedback. I would tend to agree.
And how have you done such a good job at building out your LinkedIn? Because you're doing a really good job on LinkedIn.
Thank you. I think it's so important. There's 2 components to just always be asking for more connections. And you too, right? I mean, I should take lessons from you, but for everybody, they should be asking for connections. It doesn't always have to be the people that you're trying to prospect if you're in sales, because if you're not in a sales function, you should still, the LinkedIn community, it's a thriving business place, right? And the other part is to put content out there. So make posts, create a newsletter if you have the ability on LinkedIn, write some articles on LinkedIn, and then ask your network to help share and collaborate. So sometimes I take the link from my post and I text my work friends and I'll say, hey, like, can you like this, comment, and share? So sometimes people just need to be asked to do a specific thing and then they're more than happy to do it, right? If you're asking them every day, that might be another thing. But if you can create an accountability pod with some other people, then every single time somebody releases something, it's being triggered. And then ask your network to turn the bell on for your posts so that truly whenever you do posts, you don't have to send them a text because LinkedIn will favor your post on their feed and then they will be notified of it.
Yeah, I just learned about the bell the other day. I was like, oh, fancy. This is very helpful.
Yeah, I don't do it on all my posts, but I see a lot of people that do. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's really easy to go ... And then say like, if you like this content, turn on the bell so that you'll see the content first.
There's sales on LinkedIn. There's sales in the sales book. There's leadership everywhere. And most of the tips come from our children, watching what they can pull off with their creative little minds.
I love it. Have you put them to work yet?
Oh yes, my children are working, I promise you. They're working off some trouble they've gotten into recently, so lucky me. Here's what happens. Like, we get into spots where things didn't go our way or unexpected, and our job is to generate revenue. And as a sales leader, your job is to generate revenue. And then when everything's flowing and running well, you fill in the back stuff. It doesn't matter. That's perfect.
Yeah, it is true. It is true. You're a sales leader and then you're a CEO of your house and your family and everybody depends on you. So you go out there and you monetize your skill set and yeah, you fill in the details after. Like
I love it. That's so respectable. I mean, like a lot of us are in that position more than we probably like to admit. I thought I saw a post the other day that said, really like to see some of these people's balance sheets that say that certain way, right? Like once we really get into the numbers and into it, it's like, oh, wow. There's a human component to all of this, and we wish it was prettier than what it is at times. All right. Well, we're going to send it to your LinkedIn page. Everybody's going to buy your book and cheering you on in all things sales leadership. Thanks for making this available for us.
Jenn, thank you so much for fitting me in before a big climb that you've got going on. And I just really appreciate getting to know you a little. Thank you so much.